Hey guys, what is going on? My name is Phillips, and today I'm going to be telling you all about my entire experience learning Italian, from taking it in college to going to Italy and doing a language class there. I'm going to tell you everything about it, everything you need to know if maybe you want to start learning Italian, or basically just like my experience with it and kind of like where I'm at today, what I started with, and like from that. So let's get right into it. Basically, I all of a sudden just kind of got interested in the Italian language from a young age, right after I got out of high school, a young age, lol. I downloaded Rosetta Stone and I played around with that a little bit. I did like some online stuff, like Babbel has one, Duolingo, like things like that, and I had a very basic comprehension of it. I go to college, and in my sophomore year I decided I wanted to take Italian, partly because we had to fulfill like a year's worth of language class, so I'm like, hey, I'm just gonna do Italian, you know, like I've started with this, like I might as well keep going. I'm like interested in it, and maybe I'm going to study abroad in Italy one day, like it's a concept. I'm on the quarter system at my school, so we have 3 different quarters a year. So that means that they break the language classes down into levels 1 through 6. So that's basically 2 years of language, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I started in Italian 1, and I was one of the better students in the class because I had this basic understanding of it. This is the textbook we use. It's called Piazza, which basically a piazza is like a giant square. It's like the town square in Italy. There's a whole bunch of them, and it's where there's markets and like different restaurants, like a congregation ground. So they named it that. It's written by this woman, is the head of the department in my school, Togniosi. She works at my school, and this covered Italian 1 through 3. So this was the first full year of class. And it's a pretty good book. Like, I have no complaints about this book. It was a good introductory place to start at. Vocab, grammar, it comes with like the online stuff you do. So basically, my Italian 1 experience was pretty easy. I was really good at it. So in 1, we basically learned the present tense, we learned the past tense, and that's it. We didn't really go anywhere else with verbs in that case. We just learned like basic congregations, irregulars, and like vocab words, which was like, you know, a very good, solid place to start. Italian 2 introduced the imperfect, which is like talking about like used to happen, or when you describe something like, you know, like the food was good, you know, you're like describing something, things like that. Use the imperfect. In Italian 3, things stepped up a little bit because we learned a whole bunch of new grammar stuff, so that got a little more swamped. I was a little less into it at this point, but I kind of had decided that I wanted to study abroad in Italy because I wanted to study abroad. Italy obviously made the most sense after like putting so much time and effort into the Italian thing, so I was like, okay, let's like do Italy. And then I didn't take Italian 4 at the beginning of my next year. I did not continue in the logical sequence because of several reasons. The first being that if I did 4 through 6, I would have had to go to Italy and do a full immersion program, and it was going to be difficult, and I mean, I'm going to be honest about this, I did not want study abroad to be that much of a difficult academic experience. I wanted to travel, I wanted to make YouTube videos, I wanted to work at this, and doing this in college is a very difficult balance that I do not maintain very well in my past. I'm trying really hard now. So I did not want to have a really tough time, so I'm like, I'm only going to do 1 through 3 now, and then do the next levels in Italy. Therefore, I can go to Florence instead of Bologna, and have a program that's a little better. I found out that as long as I didn't take up through 6, I could still do the Florence program. So I decided that winter quarter, I was going to take 4. This is the textbook for 4. It was stupidly expensive, like $300. It's 4, 5, 6. This deals with all those levels. It's not as good of a book as the other one. I mean, it's fine. It's just a little colder. It's not as like friendly and user inviting. It's fine. I don't know. Like, it's literally fine. Also, this book is trash because it's literally been around the world with me. I've taken this book on so many flights to like study on airplanes and like whatever, and then obviously I took it to Italy too in case I wanted to like refresh or whatever, which of course I never used it. I brought it there. Anyways, so 4 was a lot more difficult at school here. It just had a new level of hardness to it, and also with the expectation of you're supposed to know this entire book. And logically you forget, I also took 6 months off between when I took 3 and when I started 4. So that made it a little more difficult for me, and I got to the point that I was like, hey, this is a lot. This is really a lot. And I did not do super well in Italian 4. I also didn't do super well in Italian 3, as well as I did in Italian 1 and 2. But I knew like the study abroad thing was going to help the language a lot. And at this point in my learning Italian career, I did not feel like I was good. I felt like I was good in Italian 1 and 2. I felt like I was getting better at understanding, but speaking was minimal because I didn't have anyone to practice with. I had no friends who were learning Italian. We do our stupid like group projects where you like act out a scene, which was it never helped. Like, low-key teachers, if you're watching this, like the group thing needs to go. Well, at least the way our teachers always did it, it was never an effective. Everyone just like write scripts, memorize it, and then like read it. Like you're not learning how to speak, you're learning how to memorize some words in another language and repeat it back. That's not getting a natural intuition to speak. So then 4 was a struggle because we had these big articles to write, we had compositions that were hard, and we had reading comprehension things that were beyond the level that I personally was at because I had taken so much time off and forgotten so much of the basics 1 through 3. I get to Florence after now it's been another 6 months since I've taken Italian. Now I'm in Florence in the fall of 2016. And I'm sitting here like, okay, so they're gonna put me back in Italian 2. I'm like, that's fine, like whatever, I don't really care. I forgot all the basics anyways, I need to go back and learn them. They tell me, they're like, we don't put anyone back. It's against our policies. And also, we don't offer Italian 5 because there's not enough people at that intermediate level, so we're gonna put you in Italian 6. So I basically went from being a very bad student in Italian 4, skipping Italian 5, and then now being in Italian 6. And let me tell you, was it hard? Wow, was it hard? It was, like, I was abroad for, my academic program was 15 weeks long. So we did 5, 5, and 5, and I was in an intensive language class. Intensive program in general. So we did like one level for 5 weeks, another level for 5 weeks, and another level for another 5 weeks. So we did a whole year's worth of language at UCLA, a hard school, in 15 weeks, so like one semester. So we were essentially going at double pace. Italian 6 was extremely difficult. Like, oh my god, the grammar stuff we'd have to do was disgustingly hard. I was studying a lot too, and you're in an environment where I had class for 3.5 hours every day, 4 days a week. I mean, obviously we only speak Italian in class, but there's no English in class. It was difficult. We did these things where you would get, like, essentially like a script, and it'd say like, Maria, like, oh, are these flowers for me? And then John, oh yes, they're for you, I bought them at the market. Maria, oh, how lovely of you. What vendor sold them to you? And then John say like, oh, excellent, let's go back and cook dinner at my place and fall in love and get married and have kids. And so then we would have to take that and transcribe it into like talking about it in a different tense, and a different voice. So we'd have to basically say like, Maria asked John if he wanted to go and elope with her. So you're changing the tenses and you're changing all the different like ways and modes of which they speak. And that at the level that we were doing it at, like those sentences were extremely simple, but like really hard. Like when you get into the conditional tense, like would, should, those kind of things, like, woo! And then the subjunctive, which is basically like a part of English that we use every day, but we never think about until you start learning another language, which is basically like, well, the congiuntivo in Italian is what it's called. I don't really know what any of these things are in English. I just know grammar terms in like Italian now because I know them in English, but I don't like know how to talk about them in English. The congiuntivo is something that you use when you express an opinion or like an alternative fact. Sorry. Or like things like that. So you'd be like, I think that blank. You're using a new tense. If I am in English, I'm like, I think that this book is too thick. In Italian, you have to use a different tense because I said I think. The normal way you would say like, I think this is hard, it's now different because I said I think. When you get into that level, so if John said to Mary like, I think we should go wherever, now you're fucking really changing it and you're like, oh! So I was basically really unhappy for the first 5 weeks because it was that hard. It was actually, we'd have these tests that were like, holy shit. What got better was that we moved on and went to Italian 7 and 8, which were literature classes. So we would read stories in Italian and like read Italian authors, and like we read Dante, we read Petrarca, we read Boccaccio, we read so many people. Those are the big 3 that we talked a lot about. We read a lot of stuff. And it got to the point where we'd have tesinas, which we'd come to class and have 2 hours to write like a thick essay in Italian. You get to the point like, this is so hard, whatever, but when you look back on things you thought were hard like 2 weeks ago, a month ago, a year ago, you're like, okay, like LOL, you know, you get it now because you do get a lot of review of the basic stuff because you can't avoid the basic stuff. The basic stuff is taught to you first because those are the basic fundamentals of speech. Things like prepositions, super hard for me, super, super difficult. There's so many rules, but so many exceptions to the rules, more importantly. Like, oh my god, there might as well not even be rules. Like, people are probably watching this video and laughing because to them, they just get it. I'm not a great language learner. Like, I'm really good with math and science. I'm a good writer. I'm good visually. I have a lot of, like, academic areas that I'm fine in. Language learning has always been something that's more difficult for me. I get it, but it won't stick to me as hard as something else would. Like, for me, like, taking a physical science class is so easy because I just understand the concepts. I get it. I appreciate it. Whatever. Languages, much more difficult. So it's really hard for me to keep up, and this all comes down to like where I'm at now. Basically, after this program, I got to the point where I could understand exceptionally well. Recently, I've been on like an Italian kick, and I watched Under the Tuscan Sun. Right now, I'm in the middle of watching, what's that movie she was to Bali to? Oh, Eat, Pray, Love. So in both those movies, they go to Italy, the women go to Italy, and there's these little like brief times where like people are speaking Italian and they don't translate it. It just for like effect of the movie, and I can understand it like most of the time completely. And I'm like, oh, like fun. I want to keep it up, you know? Speaking is a lot more difficult for me because of a big disclaimer is the fact that I lived in Florence where literally everyone speaks English. Like, everyone speaks English. If you try to use your Italian, they will just switch and start talking to you in English. You have to have like a flawless, impeccable accent, have every word right, like every sound has to be right, and maybe you'll trick them for a little while, and then you mess up something and they just go right to English. It's like, oh no, like I'm just trying to practice. So that was a difficult thing about Florence, and that is also probably attributes to why I don't speak as well, because I didn't have to. I would try, but when they start speaking to you in English and you need to communicate something, you're gonna go to English. So speaking is coming along, but I speak at a pretty basic level compared to how I can understand. And I can write like fine. I can write a mix between speaking and comprehension. So these are things I need to work on. I would love to keep it up, and now the problem is I'm so busy here. I'm like so busy with my life every day that it's like, when am I gonna sit down and say like, I'm gonna study for an hour? Like that just, it doesn't happen. I think the best way to get around that is like watching movies, and like I'm trying to find YouTubers in Italian. Like I try to consume content in Italian, and it refreshes the things I already know. So those are big things, but after the whole abroad experience, I definitely feel like it was, of course, helped my Italian a lot. Of course, because of the level of the class that I was in, and the literature and the writing really helped. And it got to a point where I would be writing, and I can't think of it in English, what I want to write. I fundamentally can, but if I think like according to Dante, his impression of Beatrice changed the way he viewed the world and how it influenced society. I can't just translate that and write that down. I could try, but it's not going to be right or well or good. I have to just think of it like in Italian and think of what I want to say through the vocab words and through the grammar that I know in Italian, and that allowed me to actually write. So I really just have to think in Italian for things like that, because I personally just like don't know it all well enough to just be able to translate it. So having to write these essays and like do things like that and learn that side of it really did help progress my language skills on that side of it. That's basically kind of where we're at today, and I wanted to sit down and like explain this experience because I'm sure I would have liked to have seen a video like this when I was learning Italian. So that is basically what happened to me. I will go back to Italy at some point, and I will keep up my Italian, but I need to work at it, because it's like anything, use it or lose it kind of deal. So it's like, I know, but right now I'm nowhere near as like comprehensible as I was when I lived in Italy. So I want to get back to that, but that's my story. If you like the long story, make sure to subscribe and give this video a big thumbs up. Leave a comment down below maybe about your language experience. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. What are you learning? What has your experience been? Let me know down below, and I'll see you guys very, very soon for a brand new video on Cameron Phillips Raw Vlog. Love you so much. Bye.